Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Sunday, October 8th, 2017. This is Intrinsic Motivation from a Homie's Perspective. I am Hamza.
And I am David.
And today we are blessed to interview and actually just have a fireside chat with Stephanie Richardson. And Stephanie Richardson is part of Access Consciousness, and she's going to talk to us about access bars. As a little side note, it was a God wink, as we talk about in one of our earlier podcasts, where I had no idea what this was, and I had started a day like most, and I had a full schedule. And something told me to go to this event they were having here in Roswell a couple of weeks ago, and I was drawn to it. Actually had the actual access bars session for about an hour and a half, and it was phenomenal, and I've told everybody about it. So now I'm really happy to have an excellent facilitator give us more information about that with Stephanie Richardson. Welcome to the call.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what is access consciousness and access bars.
Yes. So I am a certified facilitator of access consciousness, and I became a certified facilitator in 2012. And I'm like, I forgot that I would have to talk about myself. I was so excited to talk about access and about bars that I forgot to include me in the conversation. So my job basically as a facilitator is to make things easy that are hard. Like facil, it literally means easy, and so it's the whole act of making things easy. And so access consciousness makes it easy to access the parts of you that can actually have and create ease, joy, and glory in your life. And so, one of my favorite things about it is that it is an ever-changing, weird, wild, wacky modality that works. And so bars is part of access consciousness. It's actually one of the first classes that people take whenever they're starting their journey with access consciousness. And what it is it's 32 points on the head. It's actually a physical modality. So there are 32 points on the head that when you lightly touch them, I'm about to get kind of technical for a second, that dissipate the electromagnetic charge of thoughts, feelings, and emotions that keep you stuck. And so basically, if you imagine in a junkyard, they have these gigantic electromagnets. And so with an electromagnet, if you turn it on, it'll literally pick up a car from the ground from like 20 feet up. And then when you turn it off, then it drops the car. And so for me, access bars works like that. All the junk in your life that you've gotten stuck to yourself, it turns off the electromagnet that keeps it stuck and allows for that stuff to drop away with total ease.
Wow. Interesting. That's a good visual. I like that. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so a session usually takes between 60 minutes or an hour and a half. People do shorter ones as taster sessions, or if you just need a quick pick-me-up before a meeting or something like that, or before a kid takes a test. You can do a 15-minute session and get a lot of ease out of that. But it's usually 60 to 90 minutes, and what a practitioner does is they just lightly hold those points on your head while you get to relax. Usually they do it on a massage table. You can do it anywhere, though. You can do it sitting at your desk. And you get to relax, and that's actually all there is to it. So for all the modalities that we have used in our lives in order to create change, this one is really cool because you get to lay back and relax and have things change without all the efforting that we're so used to.
Yeah. So during the session, all 32 points get touched, or just a portion, or?
Yeah, in a session, you touch all 32 points. If you're doing a quick session, you may only do an energy pull. So we start with an energy pull that basically clears the body or allows for energy to move through the body. So if you've been a desk sitter for years and years and years and years and years and haven't had a lot of energy work, one of the things that can really help and energize your body is just pulling energy through it. So that's how the session begins, is pulling energy through the body, and so that the energy can move with ease. And then from there, that's when we begin touching the 32 points. And the 32 points correlate to things like money, control, creativity, aging, joy, sadness. I won't name all 32, but those are some of the things that they sort of work through. So if you have the aging toaster, for instance, we call it the aging toaster because it instead of being a single point, actually looks a lot more like two slots going down the top of your head, sort of the same distance apart like a toaster. And so when we touch that point, all your considerations of what aging means. So what it means to be too young, what it means to be too old, what it means for your body for you to age, what it means for your life for you to age, what it means for your career for you to age, what it means about your relationships, and what it means about sex. So all of these things that you have ideas and thoughts and feelings about all of those things, and the ones that you've hidden from yourself too, the ones you don't want to look at or know about, all of those basically get activated and then released, which is fun. Hamza, what was it like for you when you were having your bars run?
Well, it was really interesting because, one, it was so new as far as what's going on. So I think the 90 minutes was good because I was trying to ascertain what was really happening. And then I had to go through my own preconceived notions. So since you're holding the base of my skull, I initially was trying to get my facilitator to kind of move up to the points that I like on my head, because I was comparing it to not reflexology, but I was just comparing it to like a head massage, which feels really good to me. I mean, I'm very tactile anyway. And so that was going on. And then also I was looking at it psychically. So I was actually having a conversation with the facilitator. I told her, and she kind of laughed at the end. I was like, you have all the patience of a saint, because I was just like, okay, now what are you doing? Okay, now I was just continuing to check in, where she was just like, just relax and let me work on you. And right? I mean, those that know me know that kind of goes on. So that mind's always going. And so it was really interesting. She told me energetically to stick my toe in the water. Just stick your toe in the water and be in amusement to enjoy this new modality. And when I did, I had passed out. I didn't know I had passed out. So, I was trying to still be cognizant, because we're in a room full of other practitioners, and they had the beds like next to each other. So I thought another guy was in the bed next to me on the massage chair table, and I was like, man, could you just shut up so I can enjoy this? And I was like, you're snoring, dude, like, be quiet. And it was me. So it let me know that I had finally let go, and I really enjoyed it. I'll let Stephanie talk about it a little bit more, but at the end I just felt so refreshed and energized at the same point. I wanted more of it.
Wow.
That's one of my favorite parts, is that when I pop up after receiving a session, I feel like a whole new person. I'm like, ooh, everything's a little brighter. I feel a little brighter. I feel happy to be alive and awake. And every session is different, too.
How did you discover Access Consciousness? What was your first experiences, or what led you there?
Well, Access Consciousness, it's funny. So I was doing a meditation and basically heard clear your schedule. And I was, I was really happy, because that month I had a whole bunch of stuff on my schedule that was all about making money, and I was really happy about it. My business was starting to take off as a photographer in ways that it hadn't taken off before. And so when I heard clear your schedule, basically my first response was no. And we know what happens when you do that. So my schedule got cleared for me. And so I was like, well, fine, what am I supposed to do? Meditate the whole time? So I began this month by meditating. And, when you sort of open the door to something, like you go, okay, I'll open this door. Where is it going? You start getting information. And so I got an email that had, I still don't know how they got my email or who these people were or how, I don't know how I got the information except for that it was in my inbox of something that was called a teleseminar or telesummit. And in the telesummits, there's a whole bunch of different people with different modalities that basically do an hour presentation on their modality. And what I heard whenever I called into this particular day was, what if 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions don't belong to you? And yeah, and there was, and all of these, it was an aha moment followed by aha moment followed by aha moment as I looked back over at my life and looked at all the different things that I had tried to change and the things that I had success with and the things that I didn't have success with changing. There were numerous times in different relationships where I used every tool I had in my toolbox, and I could get something to change, or I could change something about myself for maybe 2 days was the max. That there were certain things that I could only get them to change for 2 days before I'd be back in the same pattern, having exactly the same thoughts again, which I was so confused by, because if you can change it for 2 minutes, or if you change it for 2 days, or if you change it for 2 weeks, you should be able to just change it. So I was baffled when literally like a script, these thoughts would come back. And so when I got that information, what if 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions aren't yours? I look back at all those things that I had tried so diligently with so many different modalities to change that wouldn't. And I was like, oh, if I'm just picking that up from the people around me, or from people around the globe, or from the culture that I'm in, or from the family that I'm in, if I'm just picking all of these things up, well, no wonder you can't put them down for longer than, a couple of days, because they're still there, but they're not yours. And so the second that I heard that, I was like, okay, whatever this crazy stuff is that they're doing, I want to know more. And so I immediately went to look at when the next class was going to be for this class called Foundation, which is where they teach, well, I say they, but that, at the time it was they. Now it's, that I facilitate and other facilitators around the world facilitate. There's this class called Foundation, and that's where you get a whole bunch of these tools, or at least that's what I heard. You can have all of these tools to use. And I was like, that. And then I found out that you had to do bars first. And the last thing that I wanted to add was another freaking modality. Like I just wanted these tools. I wanted the questions that she was asking. I wanted I wanted to actually know how to do the 98%. Like, what do you do with that whenever you know that it's not yours? How do you, move beyond knowing that it's not yours to actually using that as a tool? So I wanted all of that. And then I found out that first I had to touch somebody's head. And I was like, I've been a massage therapist. I've been a pranic healer. I've taken Reiki. I've done all of these different things. The last thing I need is somebody else showing me how right they are about how you deal with a body.
Yeah.
But when I showed up, the bars class itself actually contains a whole bunch of primary tools, like who does this belong to? And another one that I infected Hamza with, which was, how does it get any better than this? Which is a question that you ask whether things are going great or whether things are falling apart in front of your face. You can say, oh, okay, and how does it get any better than this? And it keeps you from sticking yourself, whether you've decided this is the best food I've ever had, or this is the best sex I've ever had, or this is the best business I've ever had. It keeps you from sticking yourself with the great things. It allows you to have stuff that's great beyond measure, great beyond what you can imagine right now. And then whenever stuff is going terribly, it opens the door for you to get out of your own way and allow for things to actually change to work better for you there too. So it's another one of the magic tools. So it turns out in the bars class, I did get all of that magic. And I also learned how to do this modality. And it turns out now the more I do this modality, the more fun I have with it, and the more I'm super grateful that it was required before I went on to all the other stuff I thought I wanted to do.
Wow. How long does it take to become a facilitator?
Well, of Access Bars, all it takes is taking 3 bars classes, and you can be a facilitator of that. It basically, because it's so simple and so easy, and you can't mess it up. It's all that's required is that you really get the points and then know those tools in a way that you can share them with other people. So if you can say, what if 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions aren't yours, and you've played around with it yourself, then all you have to do is know how to ask people questions. You don't have to have answers for them. Because if I ask you questions, I get to empower you to know that you know what's true for you. And so it's all about empowering that, which makes being a facilitator really easy because I don't have to know everything. I get to just ask you a question.
Yeah. So how often would a person get a session, a bar session?
I suggest every day. No, actually, I suggest weekly if you can do that, and if you can't make it weekly, then once every 3 weeks works.
Okay. And now.
But the more you do it, basically, the easier your life gets. So that's why I jokingly say every day. I did do an entire month one time with another practitioner, and we traded every single day for an entire month. And at the end of the month, it's so funny because we looked and we went, oh my gosh, and this changed, and this changed, and this changed, and this got really easy, and this was really fun. What happened this month that was so different? And then we were like, wait, we ran bars every day.
Wow.
What do you mean when you say you traded?
Oh, so I would run her bars one day, and then the next day she would run my bars, so that we weren't doing 3 hours at a time, so that we could stay on task with doing it every day. We made it easier to do it every day by gifting one day and receiving another day. And trades, there's another, if anybody else hears about bars trades, we also do evenings where practitioners of bars, if you've taken one bars class, you're a bars practitioner. You can start using it in your life or in your business. If you're a massage therapist or something, you can add bars to it immediately. If you've got a coaching business, it can also be really cool if you do an hour of coaching with someone and then you do an hour of bars with someone. It basically allows for the new stuff they've become aware of, for them to have more ease with the changes that they're asking for. And so you basically speed up your coaching process or speed up your other modalities. And so if you hear about a bars trade, what it is where practitioners get together and basically swap. So one person will get their bars run, and then, we spend about an hour and a half doing that. And then everybody will get up, have snacks, have a little bit of a chat, and then you'll switch. And then you'll gift to the person who is receiving, and the person who is receiving begins to gift.
So you both benefit, it sounds like, both from giving and receiving. So you actually learn that lesson as well.
Well, and for every bar session that you gift, you actually it actually is active on your body. We had a neuroscientist that's been studying bars. And so they basically put what looks like space helmets on the people running bars, and then space helmets pre-bar session and space helmets post-session with people, and studied what the effects of bars were. And what they found is that the practitioners also got the benefit of the session. So the things that happen during a session, you basically become aligned. You're energetically, you become aligned. So all the different ways, there's a bunch of other modalities too that are all about getting you back into alignment, where if part of you feels like it's stuck over in left field, and part of you feel scattered, basically, whenever that happens, when everything's out of sorts. You literally feel like it. You feel scattered, and your life may feel scattered too. And what happens whenever you get your bars run is all of the bits and pieces and parts and energies of you actually come together and become a cohesive working unit again. So everything that's supposed to work together begins working together with ease, instead of having to reach to all these different places. I don't know if that was actually I don't know if that actually made sense, but basically, if you feel scattered, this keeps you from being scattered. And we have a neuroscientist that studied that and was like, wow, that actually happens both for the giver and the receiver at the same time. And that was one of my favorite parts of that study.
So what exactly happens with the energy that that's moving out of the person that's having it done to them? It just dissipates, or?
Well, so with the premise of what if we're all infinite beings, and what if our bodies also are infinite beings? Okay, so if you're an infinite being, does anything ever actually die, or does anything ever actually leave, or anything? It's more like it goes into all your okay. That's a great question. I haven't been asked it before in that way, and so I'm like, oh, let me formulate what that answer is. So, if you're an infinite being, you should have the ability to use any energy to do whatever you'd like to do with it. Okay, so I should be able to just use energy. There isn't actually anything that's good or bad or right or wrong about energy itself, except for that we've judged it that way. So if we've judged that something is a negative energy, then we'll start using it like a negative energy. We'll start using it like a weapon against ourselves because we've labeled it as something that's bad and wrong. If that changes and we no longer have that charge, that literally we're talking about the charge of things, if we no longer have a charge on it, if we no longer perceive an energy and then go, oh my God, that's terrible, get rid of it. If I don't have that, if I just go, oh, look at that, that's just an energy, it's information, then I can use it. So what I would say happens in a bars session is that the charge on things leaves. The thing that makes it negative, instead of just an energy that you can use in your life, changes. So now all of a sudden, instead of having all these weapons pointed at you, you have a whole bunch of tools that you can use. Because if energy is just energy, then I should be able to use any energy that's coming at me as an energizing force of creation. Yeah. I should be able to use any energy to create. I should be able to use any energy as something that could energize my body. And instead, if I'm trying to get away from an energy, wiggle away from an energy, or control an energy, what am I using my energy for? I'm actually using all the energy at my disposal to try and Jedi mind trick these other energies out, so that they don't hurt me, harm me, or make my life harder. But we're now using our energy to fight instead of using our energy to create. And so every time that we take something that we've decided is bad and actually get to use it as just information, you don't have to fight so hard anymore. So you don't have to use so much of your energy to constantly be battling things in your life. You can actually just ask a new question. So a question like, is this actually mine? So you may be battling things that aren't even yours. You may be battling emotions that aren't even yours. You may be battling thoughts that aren't even yours. You may be battling feelings in your body that aren't even yours. And so all of your energy goes to all those fights. And if it's not yours, you can just basically go, hey, thanks. You know what? Return that energy to wherever it came from. Let them deal with it. let them deal with their own stuff. And so now you get to use your energy in ways that work for the creation of your life, and you become a beacon of hope and inspiration for others instead of having to fight their battles for them. And that is one of my other favorite things, is that, what if we could live our lives as the invitation and inspiration to a greater life instead of trying to hop into the mire with people and, try and dig out their slog. We could just invite them to kind of like get out of the cesspool,
Yeah, well said. What's the, can you talk a little bit about access body? What's the difference between access body and the access bars?
Oh, that's a great question. So access consciousness has over 60 different body processes. So bars works on the head, and so that's one. They basically work like different modalities. So with bars, you're releasing the electromagnetic charge that holds all the stuff in place. And then with the body processes, it depends, because some of the body processes are about, so let me give you one. So one of them is called restoration of communion with earth. And so for that process, you would put your hands on the bottom of someone's feet and ask for restoration of communion with earth to run. And when you do that, the gift of these processes is that it begins to empower the people who take the classes and use the processes to begin to see their body and energy in a different way. It doesn't take being a master of anything or getting special permit. I don't know. There's, with a whole bunch of other modalities, it feels like there's this barrier to entry that you have to somehow be a special person, or that you somehow have to get special permission from the gods or something to use them. And the way that these work is that anybody can touch another body and ask for energy to be present and run. And so, for instance, with restoration of communion with earth, it begins to break down this barrier that we've put up between our bodies and us and the earth, and allow for us to receive from and gift to the earth just by putting your hands on another person's body and asking for that. And so it begins to give people the information that you can ask for energy, you can receive energy, and you can be an energetic presence with another person that allows for that body and that person to change. So it's a really they're empowering tools, not just in what they can be used for, because there are also ones that allow for scar tissue to change. There are ones that allow for aging. There's an energetic facelift, and that allows for the elements of aging or the effects of aging, allows for those to change. And I love that anyone can do them. And the other part that it's changed for me in my life, then this isn't one that most people talk about, but for me, it's allowed for me to be with people in a really different way, and allowed me to be with my friends in a really different way. So it's allowed me to add a level of kindness and caring in my life for the people that I know that I didn't have before. So if you get together with somebody and run something like restoration of communion with earth, it's really nurturing and it feels caring. And so for people, for instance, that have people who are in the hospital, like how often when people are sick do we actually know how to be with them? We kind of don't know what to do, so maybe we go and we watch the hospital television with them, or we go and bring them something to read, or we go and bring them something to eat, while wanting to be able to do something else. But we don't always know what that is or how to be caring. We may not have that training in our lives. I didn't come from a super affectionate family. And so to have a tool like this to be with somebody in a really caring, nurturing, kind way, while also contributing to their body, is a real gift.
Wow. Well said. So what was that like for you, Hamza, when you, or did you just get the bars, Hamza, or did you get the body too?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have exploded if I had it all done at one time. I know I was high enough after the bars that I wanted more of it, to be honest. And but Stephanie had made a really good point about being infinite beings, and you're saying or 98% of are we carrying it around, is it us? What would you say to those that would remark that, oh, well, something happened to me in a past life and it's my karma and it's my lot in life in this current life? What would you say to that from an access standpoint?
Wow, we jumped tracks. So what I would say is, what if you didn't have to be at the effect of what you've chosen in the past? And really, that's where I would start. Because we all have choices that we actually don't know that we have. And so by beginning with a question, we begin to open the door to having a different conversation with ourselves or with others or with the universe, or even between who we've decided that we've been and who we've decided that we will be. So if I ask the question, well, what if you never had to be at the effect of your past? I would ask, so I'll give you another tool that you can use right away. So one of the tools that we use for all the things that we do is, if something is light for you, it's true for you. And if something is not light for you, if it's heavy, then it's not true for you. So if I ask you the question, what if you no longer had to be at the effect of your past? Does that lighten something up for you, or does it get heavier?
Yeah.
I think what you're also saying with choice is that if we're infinite beings, it's all happening simultaneously. So we don't have to look at a past life or a future life from a historical or a future tense if it's all happening at that time. It sounds like you're saying by exercising choice, you're empowered in this present moment.
Well, what I would say about that, I do try, and when I'm facilitating classes, one of the things that can be really easy is for people to get caught up in their head whenever they're looking at things, and to look at things theoretically or use theories or about how things are from the other things that they've learned, to kind of it's to try and understand. But oftentimes when we try and understand, we make ourselves at the effect of, again, we're sort of putting ourselves at the effect of the things that we've learned instead of really looking energetically at what we're aware of. So that's a difficult muscle to retrain. So whether time is simultaneous, or whether, past, present, future is real, or whether it's all happening at the same time, we don't have to know any of that to choose differently. All we have to do is, in the present moment, make a choice. So when you said, basically that you get more present, I would say that is definitely true. And that all you have to do is ask a question in the present moment and be aware of what's true for you now, and know that in 10 seconds, that's very likely to be different again. So every choice is only good for 10 seconds. So if you stay present and basically always ask what's required right now to create the life that you would like to have, and look for what that is that you can do in the present moment, or what you can be in the present moment, you'll begin creating the life that you'd like to have without being at the effect of all these other things, no matter how they happen. Like, no matter what about science and time is true or real or not true and real, or what you believed or bought or what you've been told, it kind of doesn't matter whether your past is stuck as one thing in the past or whether it's happening now. If you're making choices now, then you don't need to know theoretically what's happening, unless that's just fun for you to explore.
Is there a minimum age for someone to have something like access bars, for example, that you recommend, or at any age is fine?
We've had 7-year-olds become facilitators.
They don't facilitate. Wow.
They don't facilitate classes on their own. But they have facilitated with their parents. Kids are faster at this stuff than we are. So kids can pretty much take one class and know what's going on, where people need a few classes to really get what's going on. So there is no minimum age. The thing that changes with bars and little kids is that we basically say, however old they are up to a certain age where they start asking for it, that you just sort of take their age and it's like add 3, and that's how many minutes. So adults do 60 to 90 minutes. That's because we're slower than kids. With kids, you just run the first point, and whatever other points you become aware of that they require or are asking for, or whatever relates to if they're having some kind of issue. And so if it's a 3-year-old, at most you're going to run their bars for like 6 minutes. Just because they're so fast and things, they don't hold on to things the same way that adults do for the most part. And there are times where that's different. If your kids are running, or if they're playing video games or something like that, you can sneak in and run their bars while they're playing video games, and then they'll let you run it longer. It just tends to be that they get fidgety because they're done. So there isn't a minimum age, and there's not a maximum age either. It basically is just, what if you added, I'd flip it back around and just ask a question: what would your life be like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years if you got your bars run? Does it lighten up? And if it does, then that's a yes for you. And then, would you be willing to give your body and your being what it's asking for, and what would create the life that you're asking for?
That was was going to be my next question, the difference between maybe working on a child and then someone maybe who's having it for the first time, who's, let's say, is in their 50s or 60s. Obviously, a child doesn't, have that all their life experience, so they don't have a lot of stuff built up, from life, as opposed to someone who's getting it done for the first time, who's a lot older. So I was just going to ask you the difference, just the apparent differences between doing it on a child as opposed to, someone who is a lot older. But I think you kind of answered that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll add one bit to it about the age. If you can get a kid to run your bars, that is really potent and fun, because they're willing to be everything that they are for the most part. And so when they do a session, they don't come with any of the doubt about it, or any of the, am I doing it right? Or is this going to work? Or how much would be okay to change? They come in with a point of view for the most part. All right, what can we change?
Yeah.
So if you get a kid to run your bars, they may run your bars for, 20 minutes, and it'll feel like they ran your bars for 7 hours.
I have a question with regards to capability and with the children. In my experience, I've seen, just like you're saying, I mean, they come in, they don't have the doubt or what have you, so they pretty much not buy into it, but they supersede anyone's or an adult's expectations at a time when they're really young. And then I've seen examples of from a psychic phenomenon where the children were just so capable up until about 12 or 13, where they started going to middle school and high school, and then they kind of got into the muckety mud that adults are usually in, and it seems like that's where they're cut off until later in life, where something happens where they're reintroduced. At least in the psychic phenomena world that I've experienced, do you see the same thing with the children, or are they consistent all the way through?
Well, no, we do see things. It does change a lot so we let kids come for free from 0 to 15. And then at 15 to 18, they pay half price, and 18 and up, they pay full price. And part of that is about exactly what you're talking about. Whenever they're younger, they get things so fast, and they're willing to change anything. And what they're doing with all of it, the body processes and the and bars, is they're having fun, and they're enjoying it, and they're seeing what they can change. So they're willing to explore that. There is something when people hit middle school, and it's really the training ground of the computational reality that we function from as an adult. And the computational reality that we function from is, where do I sit? Where do I benefit? Where do I win? Where do I lose? And what's right about this? What's wrong about this? What's good about this? What's bad about this? And the way that we've been taught that we say who we are in the world is by talking about the things that you like or don't like. Anybody who's ever been on a first date knows how that goes. Is most of your time is spent figuring out what people like or don't like, which is basically, what are your judgments about the world? And let me tell you about my judgments about the world. When you talk to a little kid, there are videos where they have little kids that are different from one another meet. And then then they interview them afterwards, and they try to get the kid to explain who the kid was. And the differences that are so obvious for adults, whether it's what race the kid was, or whether the kid had a disability, or, whatever, all the labels that we give people, little kids don't have. But by the time you get to middle school, you've been taught that the way to have an identity and the way to be a person is to have all of these judgments and all of these ways of computing yourself and comparing yourself to solidify those. And so that's really where the judgment starts to come in, and that is where the judgment becomes way more important than the exploration and play of, what can I do? What can I do? Who can I be? You now have to have the definition instead of the question. And so that solidifies starting basically in the middle school years and solidifies through high school. And a lot of people, you'll see them kind of get stuck after high school or college as what they've defined themselves as. So they may not grow much beyond that point unless they actively choose to grow and change, or they run into something that changes out of their control in their life, and then they begin looking at everything in their life as if it's a new life. So you'll see that happen too, whether it's somebody having a near-death experience, or a divorce, or a parent dying, or somebody that they care about altering what that relationship is in a way that has them, or losing a job even, that has them second-guessing who they are and what they want to be and what they'd like to have and what is this life all about. And it can be jarring for an adult to hit that place unintentionally. But I think that that's a lot where people start looking for the stuff that I know that you guys are talking about on your show on a regular basis. Is what tools do you use when your life doesn't look the way you thought it was going to?
Yeah. So do you still, you mentioned earlier when we first started off the interview about some of the other modalities that you've done in your life. Do you still do any of those others, or are you pretty much all access consciousness now?
I mostly just use access consciousness tools, but one of the cool things about access is that it's really pragmatic, and so you ask what would work. So sometimes one of my dogs likes one of the other modalities that I've done. He really enjoys the pranic healing work, and so sometimes when there's something going on in his body, I'll ask his body, which is also sort of an interesting thing. Like, I ask his body what his body requires, and I'll use whatever that is. So if I have essential oils that read, or if there's some herbal supplement that he requires, or if he wants me to do some of the pranic healing work, if that would actually work better for him, or if he wants me to use one of the access body processes, that's what I'll use. So access doesn't exclude anything else, any other modalities. But what I found is, for the most part, using the modalities, like using the energy work and using bars with people, and using something else called Symphony of Possibilities sessions with people and animals, is that you don't do bars on animals, though, just as a side note. They don't have bars. But using those is really, really effective. And part of access is always asking a question. So what's required here to create the change that we're asking for, and then using whatever information that you get to actually move forward. So I'm always using access because I'm always using a question of what's required and looking for the energetic information of what to choose in the next 10 seconds.
So these tools, you can pretty much use them on anything living, like a plant. Could you do work, some certain kind of work like on a plant or a tree? Or
You can. I had a garden that a friend of mine planted for my birthday. And after a couple of months, some of the plants were doing great. Some of the plants weren't doing very well. And I walked outside, and I had just taken a class with a facilitator who uses access tools with land and with plants. And so I walked outside of my door, and I said, oh, well, you know what? I hadn't thought to use it on my garden. And so I walked out to the plants, and I looked at each one of them and said, this is the part that sounds crazy, but it's fun to play with, where I go, do you like where you are? Like, are you happy where you are? And one plant would say, yeah, I'm happy here. And then I'd ask the next plant, are you happy here? No. And I would get the heavy, which is a no. And so I would say, okay, cool. So I took a survey of all the plants and asked each one of them if they were happy where they were, if they wanted to be somewhere different, or if they wanted to be facing a different direction. And I followed that light and heavy and replanted all the plants that wanted to be replanted. And I asked them all who they wanted to be next to and where they wanted to go and what direction they wanted to be facing. And so some of the plants came out of the garden and some of the plants stayed in the garden. A lot of the plants, I moved them to be next to different plants because I don't know enough about gardening to do it mentally. So I had nothing in my mind of how a garden's supposed to work or what light these plants were supposed to like or any of that. So this was actually a fun thing to play with. And so once I replanted them, by the next week, almost all the plants had doubled in size.
Wow.
So, yeah, you can use it with anything. Everything has consciousness, and I'm always surprised at how controversial that is as an idea, that everything has consciousness. The couch I'm sitting on has consciousness. Because it's made out of the same molecules that we're made out of. And what is it that keeps those molecules together? Like, we think that everything just sort of sticks together on its own accord. What if that's actually what if consciousness is actually the thing that creates? So basically, what if consciousness is the glue that sticks everything together? And so you can talk to the consciousness. You're not talking to something that's inanimate. It just moves slower than you do, which is why it looks so solid. And so, if you can talk to the consciousness of anything.
You had a brief story offline about a house, I think a former house that you lived in, where you had a similar experience with the plants, if you'd like to share that.
I asked so basically the moment I moved into that house, I was ready to move again. So I, got the last piece of furniture in and then went, all right, I'm ready to move. So I asked the house, I was like, okay, well, one of the things I ask before I buy anything is, will you make me money? So before I bought this house, I was like, hey, will you make me money? And it said, yes. So you basically ask what things will create in your life, and they'll give you the information. So I had asked that. Well, so I moved in, and I was already ready to move. And so I asked the house, I was like, hey, will you let me know when it's time to sell you? And I got a light. So that was yes for me. And so anyway, a couple of years later, I started getting the hint that it was time for me to start looking for something else. And so I started looking, and then I got a letter in the mail that said, hey, whenever you're ready to put your house on the market, call me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I talked to the real estate agent, got some information. We started putting together what it was going to look like to sell the house, what the price was going to be. And then I, said, hey, when should I put you on the market? And I got a date, which I thought was really interesting. I got a very specific date, December 12th. And the real estate agent was trying to put it on the market on the 11th. And so I thought I was like, oh, this is interesting. But the photographer all of a sudden couldn't make it on the day they were supposed to, so we got delayed by a day. It went on the market on the 12th and sold by the next 24 hours later. It had sold full price.
Wow.
So yeah, you can have in-depth conversations with your stuff if you want to. One of the easiest ways to clean out a closet is to go through and just ask everything. Will you contribute to the future that I'd like to have, or will you make me money, or whatever question you'd like to ask, your stuff. I play with stuff like asking food, or asking my body, or asking, or going into a closet and looking at stuff and going, hey, will you make me money? If I wear you, will you make me money? If I wear you, will you make me money? If I wear you, will you make me money? If I wear you, will you make me money? And see which ones of the ones answer yes and which ones answer no. And so when you do that, you get the chance to play with using these tools without actually having anything that you're not really risking anything except for having a cleaner closet that can contribute to you. Like you're not missing, there's nothing that's going to harm you in that. There's small enough life choices that you can begin to build your awareness, which is one of the things that I love about using these tools, and using these tools with things like inanimate objects. Or things that you don't even care that much about or know that much about. So the garden was a great chance for me to play with something that I don't know much about and use and see what happens. Because if you just play with stuff and play with what you're aware of, what'll happen is well, first of all, you have more fun with your life, but also you begin to grow your own dictionary for what awareness is for you, so that you'll really be able to trust it when it comes to really big choices or really big decisions that you have to make in your life, or ones that you feel really personal about. You'll have all of these other things that you've played with and gotten to see how it turned out, that you weren't risking anything. You have all of that under your belt so that you can actually feel really comfortable using the tools when you get to bigger choices. So if I've done this with my closet and done it with the garden and done it with, what direction to turn while I'm on a walk or that kind of thing, you have all of this. You've started to understand how you're aware about things, because the way that you're aware about the world will be different than anyone else. So you can learn modalities that will give you the answer of how things are supposed to feel. But one of the things that I've seen is that if you have, one of my friends is an animal communicator, and she's amazing. She actually has a radio show that she talks for her dog, right? So that's not how the show started. The show started with it being her giving tools of how to communicate with your pets and how to use that communication to make it easier for their behavior or for their health. And what she discovered over time is how easy it was for her to communicate with animals. But she started out taking animal communication classes about 20 years ago. And when she took those communication classes with people who were telling her how it was supposed to feel and what she was supposed to have to do to have that information, she thought she couldn't do it. And yet she's one of the most dynamic animal communicators that I know. But it was because she communicates way faster than those modalities allowed her to be aware of. So they would say that you had to sit there and you basically had to meditate with the dog, and then you had to do this, and then you had to do this, and then you had to do this, and then finally they would talk to you. But they had already had the exchange so quickly that she had already asked the dog a question, the dog had already answered, and then they didn't have anything to do for the next 20 minutes. So she thought she wasn't doing it right. So I love that by playing with tools, you get to be aware of how you're aware, and you get to build that for yourself, and you get to learn, like, well, what is it like whenever I get a heavy for me? Because that might be different for you. Like one of my friends forever, her eye would hurt really bad when it was a no. So that's different than other people's light and heavy. And then finally she was like, you know what, it doesn't work for me for my eyeball to feel like it's going to explode every time I get a no. Hey, body, is there another way you can give me this information? And then her nose started to itch when it was a no. She was like, well, that's better.
Yeah.
So as a facilitator,
different. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, it sounds like it's been a total life changer since 2012, and I do like how when I had my first session, I was given a book. And I'd like for you, because we're coming up close to the top of the hour, two things. I wanted to talk a little bit, or maybe we'll just have you back, because, I mean, it sounds like we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. So I'll withhold my first question because that will take a lot of time. But as a certified facilitator, are you only doing it in Georgia, or where are you offering your services?
I am worldwide. So I actually travel the world using these tools with people and facilitating classes, and I also use it in every kind of work that I do. So I'm one of those people who does a lot of things because it's fun for me. So I do photography and all sorts of other things and use these tools with my clients while we're doing sessions. So I do that around the world. I do have, and we do online classes too. So there have been some clarity nights that I've done recently, which basically are all about getting clear on what you're asking for. And so those we do online.
Oh, nice. So you're accessible. Play on words.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm accessible.
Where do you have any upcoming events that people need to know about?
I've got some, well, since this is going to be airing at a different time than right now, there's a video series that's coming out that is a lot like that very first telesummit that I saw, except for this will be all different access consciousness facilitators that have different specialties within access consciousness. And so we'll be doing a free video series. So I don't know if there's a way that we can link to that because I don't have the exact details on what the website is for them to go to right now because it's coming up in the future. But things like that would be really fun because people can explore how else these tools can be used with other people who talk about the tools really differently. And then I've got clarity nights. I've got a radio show that we do weekly using these tools that people can call in and actually ask more questions about. And then I've got a foundation class that'll be coming up in January. And then I'll have some Being You adventure classes that use these tools with you being you. So I've got all sorts of stuff. You can always find those at accessconsciousness.com/Stephanie Richardson.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I thought David was sitting on something.
I know. I wanted to ask you guys all sorts of questions, but I talked too much.
That just means that there's room for additional podcasts. I mean, you covered so much in that span of an hour that I'm sure that there will be more questions, of course, and then that will give an opportunity for you to talk about your upcoming classes that are happening in 2018 and just finishing off the end of the last quarter for 2017 as well. And if you want to tell your websites and where we can listen to your radio show also, that would be fantastic.
You can actually find a link, or actually all those previous episodes are available. I didn't even tell you what it's called. So the podcast is called The Good Girl's Guide to Being Wrong and Happy. And so you can find us at thegooddgirlsguidetobeingwrong.com, and that will actually take you to the show page where you can get reminders of when the next show is coming up. And but you can also find episodes right now as well at StephanieRichardson.com, that's really easy, StephanieRichardson.com. And there will be different offerings on there, and also the radio player down at the bottom, so you can actually listen right on the website.
Awesome. And for the old schoolers, they have it linked to their iTunes as well, so you can listen to their podcast while you are on the go.
Or if I love Stitcher for that. So Stitcher Radio is one of my favorites. You can choose all your favorite podcasts, and it'll automatically update them and keep them right in your own personal playlist. So you can have your, you can have your homies on there and have it so that when you open Stitcher, their most recent podcast, if they sign up for it, or, The Good Girl's Guide to Being Wrong and, Freakonomics, whatever your other podcasts are that you love, you can have those right there at your fingertips, auto-updating, which I love.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So,
again, we thank you for your time. This is Intrinsic Motivation from a Homie's Perspective. This is Hamza.
And I'm David.
And we had the benefit and pleasure of speaking with Stephanie Richardson. She's a certified facilitator of access consciousness and learning more about access bars and all the other modalities that we would sure love to have her back and talk more about. Thank you for your time, Stephanie, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.